So let's talk a little bit about the our fast facts.
Let's do some fast facts.
Fast facts.
Fast facts.
Just to put this in a little bit of context, Breakdown was released in the US by Paramount on May 2nd, 1997, which was approximately 4 months after our last film, The Relic, almost 9 years now after Die Hard. Produced by Dino De Laurentiis and Martha De Laurentiis, directed by Jonathan Mostow, who co-wrote the screenplay with Sam Montgomery, and of course it stars Kurt Russell, Kathleen Quinlan, J.T. Walsh, MC Gainey, and Jack Noseworthy. On an estimated budget of $36 million, it grossed $50 million, receiving positive reviews and gone on to gain a pretty substantial, I think, cult following. I mean, when I did throw up that, I mean, obviously I'm being glib about Citizen Kane, but it did start like quite an interesting, engagement on social media where people actually really dig this movie. And I think you're so right that it's just like, if you were to say to people, how would you describe the movies of the 90s? It's like, look at this. It almost encapsulates everything. And as you're saying as well, there's an element to there's a slight Yuppie in Peril crossover to this film.
Mm-hmm.
That genre, this is like a Yuppie in Peril thriller, but with the volume turned up to 10, But the reason we're talking about this film on the show is because our show is about Die Hard. And some people might be scratching their heads and wondering, what's the connection between this film and Die Hard? What's it got to do with Die Hard? Which we like to analyze in a section called
Die Hard DNA. Phil, that was an extraordinary amount of setup for that line. I was like, when am I saying it? When am I saying it? Anyway, this is basically a radio show at this point.
So I'll get on with the, the things that I caught, and then I'd love to kick it over to you guys, see if there's anything that you... sorry, we're getting those crazy... we're doing a Zoom today, so we're getting those random, balloons and thumbs up.
I love it. You're this erudite philosopher, but you love, a nice little meme or something that pops up there. Yeah,
it was just me drinking my tea here, and then it made...
It's just killing your rap. It's killing the rap that it's okay. It's the good stuff.
So the first element of Die Hard DNA I would suggest is you've got the classic regular guy caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. His wife is taken hostage by a fiendish criminal mastermind who's motivated by money. Despite being outnumbered and outmatched, this everyman hero battles back against the hostage taker and his ruthless henchmen, takes the fight to them. These are all elements of Die Hard. You've also got a couple of other interesting ones. A villain pretending to be someone else to try and confuse the hero, right? That occurs in both movies with the classic Bill Clay scene, here with the J.T. Walsh character pretending that he is, I suppose, essentially gaslighting Kurt Russell, right? That he's, I've never seen you before and all of that. You've got the police being ineffective, unhelpful, slow on the uptake, and sort of impotent, right, in this way that they are in Die Hard as well, right? Although I think the cop character is quite interesting, quite kind of believable. He's not just he's neither good or bad. Yeah, the Rex Linn character, he's sort of neither good nor bad. He's just like a functionary, So I think that was kind of interesting. So all of which means you have this isolated hero who has to rely on his wits and improvise, using limited available items to create makeshift weapons and all of that. So although, again, on face value, I say this isn't like a Die Hard honor scenario per se, because it's an expansive, more of an expansive movie, I think at its core, husband, wife, criminal mastermind, improvisation, all of those things, and the police's irrelevance to the inability to help him, all of which I would say, that's my argument as to why I would say this is a relevant movie. Do you guys have any thoughts on that, or any additions? Or
yeah, I think that's all great. Sorry,
yeah, I was just thinking, I hadn't actually really registered the scene until you said it again, talking about the impotence of the police. But the scene where he goes to try to report his wife, and there's the huge cork board of missing people.
Ooh, yeah,
that is such a gut punch.
Yeah,
and it's the moment where you're like, well, he's definitely on his own. Because the way the cop is just like, yeah, I mean, I don't know, we'll put it up there. We'll keep our eyes peeled. He's going to do absolutely nothing, and it feels so hopeless. And it also really feeds into that paranoia later of are they in on it? What is going on with this weird town of Hatchet? But yes, that was a really effective scene. It really kicks us off to being like, Kurt Russell's gonna have to do this all by himself.
I love that it's named Hatchet. It's like, don't stop in that town. Don't stop in a town named Hatchet.
One of the other things I like about it, and I think this just builds on what you're saying, Phil, is that the film highlights his failures. So it's Kurt Russell's character of Jeff, his failures. So throughout, like, just to give a couple examples, he's captured by the villains. Like he escapes down the river, and then he kind of retreats back to spy on them, and then he's captured by Billy or whatever. He's knocked out by Billy. When he also in the bathroom, so in the bathroom of the bank, he goes into the bank, he's got to get the money, doesn't have enough money, he's trying to figure out how to get out of it. You see the desperation on his face as he goes into the toilet and he's like, what do I do? How am I going to get out of this? He pulls a plunger apart to try to use it as a stick, try to hold it, and then he just gets rid of it. I think all that stuff is really, it adds to the sort of everyman suspense of this, in that you see the process as he's working it out. Unlike in a movie where I also love movies where the guy just does it perfectly, like the special ops movie where they just go in and they just kill everyone. There are no mistakes made. I love that too. But this movie really is highlighting his sort of ineffectiveness.
It reminds me, especially the scene we just said about the bank. I think one of the producers, I think it might have been Mario Casar when we did our Die Hard with a Vengeance episode. He said, all the Die Hard movies are a guy in a box, and the box can be a building or it can be an entire city, as it is in Die Hard with a Vengeance. But ultimately, it's still a guy in a box, and it's basically, and that's what this film I think has, especially in that scene, like at the bank, where it's like being backed and backed and backed into an increasingly tight corner, and using your wits and your and his courage as well, but his intellect to try and solve a seemingly insolvable problem, So I think that element is a good connection between the two films.
I like the idea of the box. So if you think about what's the box in this film, it's the desert.
Yes.
So he's stuck in the desert. And I like thinking of the desert. There's a sort of a bunch of sort of subgenre of movies of like people on the road getting harassed or whatever, right? And like, what's the like thing that they're stuck in is the fact that their car might break down, or your car might break down, and then you're at the mercy of just whatever happens to be out there. Hitchhikers, truckers, and you could kind of think of it a little bit like the trucker is like the shark patrolling the open waters. Like if you were to think of the water as like where it's open, it's expansive. You're not like, it's not the same thing as being claustrophobic, being trapped in a single place. But it really is, because you can't, once you're there, like, and your boat runs out or your car gives out, you are stuck. And then you're just at the mercy of the elements and whatever nefarious creatures are nearby.
Yeah, that's a fantastic analogy, a really interesting way to look at it. It's all, or space, as well, to some extent, right? Like there's that, it's like the environment itself is a threat at a certain point, and then within that there are these other sort of forces that might be like predatory in some way, or natural.
One thing I've been thinking about while you guys have been talking about this is that how this movie is like, if you were to take previous movies that we've talked about on the show and make this in a cocktail, it's like 2 parts Die Hard, 1 part The River Wild, and 1 part Nick of Time. Nick of Time having this sort of beta male that has to become an alpha male to like confront the villains. River Wild has this something similar in that it's this like East Coast person in a fish out of water kind of environment, and then combined with all the Die Hard, the Cracker Jack quality of Die Hard setting, it feels like
Massachusetts again in River Wild. So something about that seems to be some kind of shorthand for a certain level of like sophistication, I assume, right? Yeah, like intellectuals, like well-educated. Like the David Strathairn character, was he like an architect or something, right? And
he's an architect,
something like that. That sophisticated.
Do we know what Kurt Russell does in the movie? I can't remember.
Don't know if it's ever mentioned,
no
right?
details. I kind of love that.
They're moving to San Diego.
Everyman,
So
he's a guy who wears polo shirts.
I also think if you want to think of the two coasts of the U.S. as like the bastions of the liberal elite, and like where the quote unquote educated, wealthy, suburbanites kind of live. And then the middle of the country as what? It's just like this hellscape. It's like,
Yeah.
Everything else
and you
in the
have to
middle.
traverse
Fly
it, right?
over
You have to
states.
traverse it to get from one side to the other.
Well, let's dig into that in a bit more detail in our next section, Anatomy of an Action Movie.